Princess Bride, S. Morgenstern's classic tale of true love and high adventure. The Good Parts version, abridged by William Goldman. Part 5, Section 1 of the announcement. The great square of Florence City was filled as never before, awaiting the introduction of Prince Humperdinck's bride-to-be, Princess Buttercup of Hammersmith. The crowd had begun forming some 40 hours earlier, but up to 24 hours before, there were still fewer than 1,000. But then, as the moment of introduction grew nearer, from across the country the people came. None had ever seen the princess, but rumors of her beauty were continual, and each was less possible than the one before. At noontime, Prince Humperdinck appeared at the balcony of his father's castle and raised his arms. The crowd, which by now was at the danger size, slowly quieted. There were stories that the king was dying, that he was already dead, that he had been dead long since, that he was fine. My people, my beloveds, from whom I draw our strength. Today is a day of greeting. As you must have heard, my honored father's health is not what it once was. He is, of course, 97, so who can ask more? As you also know, Florin needs a male heir. The crowd began to stir now. It was to be this lady they had heard so much about. In 3 months, our country celebrates its 500th anniversary. To celebrate that celebration, I shall, on that sundown, take for my wife the Princess Buttercup of Hammersmith. You do not know her yet, but you will meet her now. And he made a sweeping gesture, and the balcony doors swung open, and Buttercup moved out beside him on the balcony. And the crowd, quite literally, gasped. The 21-year-old princess far surpassed the 18-year-old mourner. Her figure faults were gone. The too bony elbow having fleshed out nicely, the opposite pudgy wrist could not have been trimmer. Her hair, which was once the color of autumn, was still the color of autumn, except that before she had tended it herself, whereas now she had 5 full-time hairdressers who managed things for her. This was long after hairdressers. In truth, ever since there have been women, there have been hairdressers. Adam being the first, though the King James scholars do their best to muddy this point. Her skin was still wintry cream, but now with 2 handmaidens assigned to each appendage, and 4 for the rest of her, it actually, in certain lights, seemed to provide her with a gentle, continually moving, as she moved, glow. Prince Humperdinck took her hand and held it high, and the crowd cheered. That's enough. Mustn't risk overexposure, the prince said, and he started back in toward the castle. They have waited, some of them, so long, Buttercup answered. I would like to walk among them. We do not walk among commoners unless it is unavoidable, the prince said. I've known more than a few commoners in my time, Buttercup told him. They will not, I think, harm me. And with that, she left the balcony, reappeared a moment later on the great steps of the castle, and, quite alone, walked open-armed down into the crowd. Wherever she went, the people parted. She crossed and recrossed the great square, and always ahead of her, the people swept apart to let her pass. Buttercup continued, moving slowly and smiling, alone, like some land messiah. Most of the people there would never forget that day. None of them, of course, had ever been so close to perfection, and the great majority adored her instantly. There were, to be sure, some who, while admitting she was pleasing enough, were withholding judgment as her quality as a queen. And of course, there were some who were frankly jealous. Very few of them hated her, and only 3 of them were planning to murder her. Buttercup naturally knew none of this. She was smiling, and when people wanted to touch her gown, well, let them. And when they wanted to brush their skin against hers, well, let them do that too. She had studied hard to do things royally, and she wanted very much to succeed. So she kept her posture erect and her smile gentle, and that her death was so close would have only made her laugh if someone had told her. But in the farthest corner of the great square, in the highest building in the land, deep in the deepest shadow, the man in black stood waiting. His boots were black and leather. His pants were black and his shirt. His mask was black, blacker than raven. The blackest of all were his flashing eyes, flashing and cruel and deadly. Buttercup was more than a little weary after her triumph. The touching of the crowds had exhausted her, so she rested a bit, and then, toward mid-afternoon, she changed into her riding clothes and went to fetch horse. This was the one aspect of her life that had not changed in the years preceding. She still loved to ride, and every afternoon, weather permitting or not, she rode alone for several hours in the wild land beyond the castle. She did her best thinking then. Not that her best thinking ever expanded horizons. Still, she told herself, she was not a dummy either, so as long as she kept her thoughts to herself, well, where was the harm? As she rode through woods and streams and heather, her brain was awhirl. The walk through the crowds had moved her, and in a most strange way, or in a way most strange. For even though she had done nothing for 3 years now but trained to be a princess and a queen, today was the first day she actually understood that it was all soon to be a reality. And I don't like Humperdinck, she thought. It's not that I hate him or anything. I just never see him. He's always off someplace or playing in the zoo of death. To Buttercup's way of thinking, there were two main problems. One, was it wrong to marry without like? And two, if it was it too late to do anything about it? The answers to her way of thinking as she rode along were, 1, no, and 2, yes. It wasn't wrong to marry someone you didn't like, it just wasn't right either. If the whole world did it, that wouldn't be so great, what with everybody kind of grunting at everybody else as the years went by. But of course, not everybody did, so forget about that. The answer to 2 was even easier. She had given her word she would marry. That would have to be enough. True, he had told her, quite honestly, that if she said no, he would have to have her disposed of in order to keep respect for the crown at its proper level. Still, she could have, had she so chosen, said no. Everyone told her, since she became a princess in training, that she was very likely the most beautiful woman in the world. Now she was going to be the richest and most powerful as well. Don't expect too much from life, Buttercup told herself as she rode along. Learn to be satisfied with what you have.